Hello and welcome back to the Dragon Plus live stream. It has been a while, and it has been a while since we've spoken. More than a month. I am joined, as I am every other week, with Jeremy Crawford, the lead rules designer of Dungeons and Dragons. So, welcome back to the live stream.
I'm always happy to be here. And I, as you said that, I was wondering, where did the last month go?
Yeah, I know. A lot of it was eaten up by D&D Live 2019, The Descent.
That's right.
And you were not only a dungeon master there, you were also a surprise player, or I don't know, NPC?
Yeah, I got to be an NPC.
Yes.
I DM'd my game
Yes.
on that Friday, and then after that, I got to appear as an NPC in Kate Welch's game, reprising my role as Mad Maggie.
And in your game, your players were Kelly D'Angelo, Taliesin Jaffe, Taryn Killam, Alex Lee, Joe Manganello, Serena Marie. Is that, do I have that correct?
It was a great bunch.
Yes.
I loved DMing for them.
Well, any thoughts or impressions from D&D Live now that the new storyline is out? Some things were announced. I got a chance to see everyone live and in costume.
It was an amazing event. Everyone there was super excited, which those of you who saw the stream probably caught glimpses of. That not only did people watch the games that we DM'd on the main stage, but they also had a chance to play a bunch of D&D themselves as a part of the D&D Epic. There were chances for people to chat with us and for us to chat with them.
Yes.
So just all around, a great experience, sort of a very concentrated convention dedicated solely to D&D.
Yes.
So it's hard not to love that. And I am always happy when I get to DM or play D&D. So, and even better if I get to play a hag in the mix, which I got to do twice that weekend. So for me, that's a good weekend.
Yes, Nathan Stewart had mentioned this sort of at the end of the show, but there were a limited number of tickets that were available. They were not inexpensive in a relative way. We were asking a lot of folks to be able to come there, get a hotel, purchase the ticket to the event. So we did want to make it worth everyone's while, and hopefully those who were able to attend found it exactly so. And for those who weren't able to attend, we did look to broaden our streaming across not just the D&D channel, but for subsidiary channels throughout the show. Quick housekeeping on that. Running 4 channels had some challenges along the way. So we'll be looking to get all of those videos up on YouTube for archival purposes. Many of them with the sound, which we dropped on a couple of episodes, unfortunately. Running a live event, again, challenges. Friday night, there were a set of balloons that somebody was carrying home in a taxi cab, went into the power lines, brought the power down, in Chris Perkins's game right after yours.
Oh no, that would have been on
Was that
Saturday night.
Sorry, Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thankfully, our night, Friday, was spared the curse of the balloon.
Yes, the balloon monster. But so now I need to write that up in some sort of adventure.
Yeah, beware balloons. I was also excited to see how happy people were with our product announcements. As many of you know, we are constantly working on various books and box sets and other goodies. And sometimes we'll go a while without announcing what the heck it is we're working on. And so it's always exciting when we finally get to pull back the veil and say, hey, here's some of what we're working on. And I was really glad to see people excited to dive into Descent into Avernus, Avernus. It's so funny. I always go back and forth on how I pronounce it.
Well, people were noticing it by coincidence or design. It kind of sounds like Descent into a Furnace.
Exactly. Well, and the most sort of traditional pronunciation in English is Avernus, because it's not a D&D word. This is actually it is a real world word.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, Avernus.
Okay.
And how I always get myself to remember the correct pronunciation is I think of a furnace.
Yes.
And I was also glad to see people jazzed about the Essentials kit. That was something Chris Perkins and I had a lot of fun creating, along with wonderful help from other members of the team. And our dice sets and
Yes.
all the other goodies, the Rick and Morty box set,
Yes.
so much coming up that I think people are going to enjoy.
There were a lot of product announcements. Baldur's Gate descended to Avernus, September 17th, I believe, is the release date. D&D Essentials Kit, it hits Target June 24th, and then later on in the year everywhere. So, yes, lots of exciting things to look forward to. As always, as you know, I was sequestered in a small office room upstairs for most of the event, working on things online.
Well, so for those of you who don't know, as he said, Bart is one of the people making it all happen behind the scenes. And on some of the mornings of this event, and this was true at last year's event as well, I would come into one of those backstage rooms and find Bart hunched over his laptop. And I was like, Bart, you were in the same position when I left last night. Did you ever go back to the hotel?
I think that's going to be the change for the future, is let's just have cots. So, like at some point, it was diminishing returns to go back to the hotel. It just made more sense to stay there.
Well,
it's catered.
And then we could add on a whole new track of late night D&D games. Just play D&D
exactly.
around the clock.
I see it looks like the first of our sweepstakes is open now. We did have some leftover goodies from the swag bags that we were going to be giving out. A D&D cooling towel, which I didn't even know was a thing.
I didn't either.
D&D Beyond inspiration token. We've got some Adventure Zone comics as well. So we'll do one sweepstakes now, and we'll do another one at the bottom of the hour. So. But again, it was. I would reiterate as well. It was a great time. All the work paid off. It was a great event, and kudos to Greg Tito for largely helping corral and general that together, and everyone for participating. The games were great. They were a lot of fun to watch. I might have been hunched over my laptop, but I could at least be watching the games.
Right.
And
right.
Yes, the Mad Maggie appearance was at least well appreciated online.
Oh, based on what many people told me at the event, I'm starting to think I should just appear at future conventions as Mad Maggie. They're like, they don't care about Jeremy Crawford anymore. Just Mad Maggie is going to come to all these conventions, and we'll see if I can answer rules questions as her.
Well, you'd be glad to know I'm working on the next Extra Life adventure for this year. It does feature both a unicorn and a hag by intention.
That's like a love letter to me. And now I want to DM it where I do a scene where I play both the hag and the unicorn.
Yeah, you could do. Yes, we could figure that out. It's a unicorn riding a hag riding a unicorn,
or even better if it's the unicorn riding the
riding that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, take that, hag. It's their comeuppance. So,
yeah.
We wanted to talk about Unearthed Arcana. The Artificer Returns dropped a couple of weeks ago. There was new material added in. We wanted Jeremy to kind of walk us through, talk through. Again, if you do have questions, please put them into chat. Please do preface them with a question. If we don't get to them this week, we do archive them so that we can have questions from last time. So we will get to them hopefully eventually. Before we dive in there, as always, the recent cultural current events, I like to ask about your preferences. Better conclusion, Game of Thrones or Avengers Endgame? Without giving spoilers away, did you have a hot take on?
I think I enjoyed the final journey in Endgame more than I enjoyed the final journey in Game of Thrones. But there were a few things at the very, very, very end of Game of Thrones that I was happy about. Mm-hmm. But since you said no spoilers, I can't say what they are.
I know. Yeah.
So I will just say, and everyone who's seen the final episode of Game of Thrones will know what I'm talking about, but there is a certain female character where I went into the final episode and I said, as long as she ends up on a throne, it doesn't even have to be the Iron Throne, I will be happy. And so the woman I was rooting for did indeed end up on a throne. And oh my God, the gown she was wearing as she sat down upon the throne and was proclaimed the queen of something. I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the episode yet. I was like, oh well, whatever else happened, I got that.
Well, technically, it's not on camera, but every character sits on a throne at some point in there. It might be a different... Moving on.
Yeah, there was a character earlier in the series who got shot by a crossbow while sitting on that throne.
Yes. Yeah, they probably all sat on a throne at one point. So, the Artificer.
Yes.
Tell us about the Artificer Revisited.
Again, for the first time.
For the first
So everyone, just so you know, each time I've been doing the Artificer recently, I laugh when we put it up because it feels like a movie with a bunch of sequels. You know, it's the Artificer Returns.
Yes.
Meet the Artificer again for the first time.
The end of Return of the King. It's like, well, a little bit more. Hold on, a little bit more.
Now, I love working on this class. For those of you who have seen the latest iteration, it is, and those of you who haven't, it is the one that includes the two newest subclasses, the Archivist and the Battlesmith. We also added 3 new infusions to the class, and also we made a slight revision to the multiclassing rule. Some important thing that we did not do is we did not make any major revisions to other parts of the class. I bring that up front because I haven't been asked questions like, why didn't I change how the turrets work in the artillerist? Or why didn't we make an adjustment to arcane armament? That kind of thing.
And we have had those questions come up.
Yes.
Are you going to modify them or change the balance in some way?
And there is a very, very good chance that those are going to change. For instance, people ask, will the flamethrower option on the turret get modified in some way? The answer is almost certainly yes. But I did not want to make any of those sorts of changes until we got feedback from the survey, which is something I mentioned in our last episode.
Yes.
And now, for those of you who don't know, the Artificer survey is live on our website. Please, if you've been reading the Artificer, discussing it with each other, playing it, please give us your feedback, and your feedback will be an important component in how we evolve the class in the coming weeks. Because once we have all of your feedback, we'll look at our own notes, we'll look at the balance adjustments that we want to make, and we will synthesize all of that so that we can push the Artificer to its next revision to get it closer and closer to its finished form. And which indeed it is making its way toward a form that would then be ready to finally become an official part of the game. But so in this latest update, really the main bits. Oh, and I just actually remembered there was another change we made, and that was some revisions to the spell list. And the main part of that was adding in some spells from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. But let's talk about the Archivist and the Battlesmith.
Yes, so these were 2 new subclasses that were added to the recent version. So let's start with the Archivist.
Yes.
Talk through sort of the design and creation of this subclass. I'll also say in the Extra Life Adventure, I'm trying to figure out a way to put in an enemy Artificer as well.
Oh,
so
excellent.
I have to figure out which subclass of Artificer to use.
Well, plus, keep in mind, with an NPC, you can kind of cheat and take what you like best from each one. Since NPCs don't have to follow the same rules as player characters.
Done. So it shall be. But if one of them were going to be an Archivist, what would an Archivist Artificer be like?
So the genesis of the Archivist was I wanted to create a version of the Artificer that was all about creating essentially artificial intelligence. And one of the main reasons why that was a motivator for me is, one, I thought it would be cool if we could pull it off, but more importantly, two, artificers in the world of Eberron are presumed to be a part of the team of people who created not only the Warforged, but a number of the other constructs that served different nations in the last war. And when you have all of these beings that have intelligences in them, I thought, well, it would make sense that among the artificers, there would be a kind of artificer who is a master of creating those intelligences. And that, it's those two things of trying to address that bit of Eberron's history, and then also in a way just kind of a self-imposed design challenge, that led to the creation of the archivist, who also has their roots in scroll scribing, partly because the original artificer back in 3rd edition had expertise in different types of magic item creation. So you'll now see that in the 4 subclasses we have, each subclass has some type of magic item that they are better at making than other magic items. And so with the archivist, it's scrolls. And that is actually a nod to the history of these people, that they started out as traditional medieval-style archivists, but decades ago they began to try to create better information storing methods. And then in the process, in the world of Eberron, they were like, well, what if the information storing mechanism could itself think? And that gave way then to what you see in the archivist, which is the creation of an artificial mind. And this is this really neat ability for the archivist to invest intelligence in an object. And a theme I brought up in our last talk about the artificer is that I want each type of artificer to feel like they have things they can make that are all their own, that they can customize how it looks. And so I'm looking forward to seeing all of the different things that archivists choose to be the holder of the artificial mind. You know, because you could have one archivist whose artificial mind is inside a book. Another might be a rock. You know, they have their little pet rock. Another, you know, might have some toy. And just through the choice of object, you can say a tremendous amount about your character.
Right. I was going to say it also kind of continues forward the theme of whether it's the homunculus or the turret, there's a great deal of personalization and customization that the players have some agency about how they want their companion, in this case the artificial mind, to appear. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to again sort of the creativity that comes across as far as what people come up with for these things. So yes, so the artificial mind, it's an infusion, not an infusion because that's another term for the artificer, but an object that is imbued with sort of this artificial mind.
Exactly. And while you have that object with you, you basically can get advice from the mind telepathically. And this is expressed in game by giving you proficiencies you wouldn't otherwise have necessarily. And the proficiencies that you can choose from are based on the main material that object is made out of. So something that is made out of paper, for instance, is going to give you access to what we would think of as knowledge sort of skills. Something made out of, say, leather or another animal part will instead give you access to different skills that have to do with perceptiveness, medicine, animal handling, and whatnot. If you're curious, by the way, why material of the object has any effect on the skill proficiencies, this is me having fun with medieval notions of sympathetic magic. In the Middle Ages in our world, people who explored different magical traditions had this notion that different objects, different phenomena in the world would have different magical properties based on their nature. I also wanted to have this a part of the subclass because I wanted your choice of object to be not just a cosmetic choice, but to also have a game mechanical outcome. So you might one time invest a book with a mind because you want access to the skills that that book can give you. But then another time, you might, again, want the rock because you want to intimidate people or deceive them or whatnot. So that's just a fun little sort of flavor bit to help the archivist feel grounded in the world before they then become ungrounded by having the mind that's inside the object actually manifest outside it. And here is another chance for people to customize because you get to decide what does the mind look like if it manifests as this sort of spectral presence outside the object. And this isn't just a cool special effect, but this
But
mind.
it is.
Well, it is. It is a very cool special effect. But while manifested, this mind can help scout things out. It can also be used as the point of origin for some of your spell casting. In a number of ways, it essentially is functioning for you like a familiar would for a wizard or another character who might have a familiar in the game. But this is sort of a familiar plus because it's also, again, giving you information through its telepathic advisor ability. It also is not actually a creature of any kind. I mean, and in fact, it's not anything. It's almost like a magical hologram that is present because it's intangible.
Invulnerable.
It's invulnerable. This is not something that people can really interact with other than it's like, what the heck is that strange thing?
But this is a thing that other people outside of the Artificer itself can see, correct?
When it is manifest.
Okay.
Yeah, because an Artificer could, if they decide, not have the mind manifested, and then the Artificer will just look like a person, because the Artificer might have that rock or that book or that teacup or whatever it is that has the mind in it, might have it just somewhere on their person, and no one would ever know that this strange mind is present upon them.
Which lends itself to some great role playing for an NPC Artificer. Like, which object is it? Are they hoaxing you? Do they really have an object?
Right. Now, while the mind is inside the object becomes a magic item. So at least if someone else has magic detection abilities, they'll be able to say, why is that teacup glowing? I've never seen a magic teacup before. And they might not realize that, like in Beauty and the Beast, that teacup has a personality and
Yes.
might even sing a song.
That's Chip. Everyone knows that's...
Now, I feel a bit with the archivist. But wait, there's more. Because the mind can also do information overload, where while it's manifested, you can have the mind, that manifested mind, get close to somebody and then just essentially do an information dump into their head. It is like a garble, so it's not actually giving them information. Instead, it's an attempt to kind of like scramble that person's mind, and they're at risk of taking psychic damage and also having also being lousy at defending themselves, and which the practical effect of that is attack rolls against the person while they're reeling from all this information in their head. Attack rolls have advantage against them.
This is rife for comic possibility. I was just thinking when talking to my 5-year-old, it's information overload.
That's right. That's right. Now, in addition to this artificial mind, when you choose Archivist as your subclass, you're also, like the other Artificer subclasses, you're getting some tool proficiencies. In this case, you're getting the calligrapher's supplies and the forgery kit. And as I mentioned earlier, you're better at crafting scrolls than most other people. You also have a list of spells that you know, or rather that you always have prepared. And people will notice that these spells mostly have to do with information gathering or dealing psychic damage. Again, I always imagine it as I was designing this as it's like you're backing up a dump truck of data
Yes.
and dumping it into someone's mind, and it's too much for them.
Yes.
Because it's not just coming from you, it is also potentially coming from this artificial intelligence that you have awakened.
They're drinking from the fire hose.
Exactly. Now, as you go up in level, at 6th level, you become better at dealing psychic damage. So you'll see again, there's a theme here. I wanted to make it so that you become more and more powerful at this. And that increase in psychic damage not only applies to Artificer spells you cast, but also to the psychic damage of your information overload. You also now get this neat ability of magical telepathy. You can almost think of it as your cell phone network, where anyone who is carrying an item bearing one of your Artificer infusions, you can transmit your thoughts to them while you have your artificial mind item on you. So it's basically your artificial mind item is creating a magical network with the magic items that bear your Artificer infusions, and you can communicate out to people. And I put in here that the two-way communication that you can have with those people can even cross planar boundaries. So you can like call each other up using these magic-infused items to communicate with each other. One of the neat things about this is this is even true for an item that you might have dropped into someone's pocket. So you might have an item that bears one of your infusions, you drop it into their pocket, and now suddenly you can communicate telepathically with them. They can communicate back with you,
Right.
Because we do specify that this communication is two-way. So that's a little fun in-play twist I'm not sure people have noticed yet. And that is a twist that people should keep in mind when they're reading Infoportation, the 14th level ability, where the archivist gains the ability to turn themselves essentially into magical code and transmit themselves. As I was designing this, by the way, I was joking at my desk that I've created the first D&D ability to email yourself. Because you can then teleport yourself next to somebody that has one of the items that bears one of your Artificer infusions, or next to the spectral mind if it's floating out there somewhere.
So there seems like good strategic opportunity to do exactly that. However you're disseminating these magic items, the infused items throughout the world, you are maintaining an actual physical connection with them insofar as you can teleport to them as needed.
Yes, and in what you just talked about, that element of planting the items, that gets at something that was important to me while I was designing this, and that is making sure that a subclass that's all about the mind and information and creating objects to hold information, that it really would speak to a player who likes strategic thinking. Because a big part of this is where are these objects? And archivists might be playing long games where it's, all right, we need to make sure that this item bearing my infusion gets onto this person's, into their pocket or into this place before X can happen. So archivists, the name sounds like they might all be bookish nerds like me, but you can even imagine archivists playing a key role in various heists.
Yes.
as not only they can help create communication networks, but also suddenly appear somewhere after emailing themselves.
I was picturing sort of a gift given to, a dignitary that is otherwise difficult to reach or heavily guarded. And, well, now this is, in their vicinities, so the archivist has access to them. I wanted to at least ask a couple of questions here as they come in. Are you worried about being able to cast harmful spells through an invulnerable, manifested artificial mind? Is that a concern that people would use the artificial mind as a means to sort of cast harmful spells through it in a way that it can't be affected?
That's not a concern for me, largely because the distance that the mind can be away from you, at least given how slowly it moves, is not that far.
Okay.
Because once it gets more than 300 feet away from the item that holds it, it just poof, vanishes. And so what you can imagine what's really going on here, I mean, it seems it's one of those things that in some ways is not as powerful as it seems. It is very cool, particularly because the manifested mind can maybe get around a corner, where like you're hiding somewhere and it gets around a corner.
Yeah.
But ultimately, really what it's doing is this is just adding to the range of your spells. And that is something that other classes can do. Sorcerers can do it with metamagic. There are other ways in the game to do it where you increase your range. But this is sort of a range increase with a really cool visual effect. Right. With that, again, that twist of it can get around corners or whatnot. One thing, too, is the special effect itself will alert your foes that something is up, and if they're not able to hurt this thing that appears to be harming them, there's a good chance they're going to think someone else might be here.
It's not the thing. It's
So if the archivist is hiding somewhere, after a few attempts by your foes to hurt that manifested mind, they're probably going to go a-hunting. And that's an important thing, too, to keep in mind whenever you are evaluating something for D&D. It's a role-playing game. And that's true not only for the player characters, but for the monsters and the NPCs. We don't assume that they are going to be used sort of like pieces in a board game. Every monster, every NPC has thought, has motivation, has personality, and they're going to figure things out. They have skills and they have ability scores, just like player characters do. A monster and an NPC are not sort of locked into just doing the actions in their stat block.
Right.
They can use their skills. They can make just general ability checks. They can use deductive reasoning. If they figure out, hey, attacking this thing doesn't work. Unless it is a creature that is spectacularly stupid, and where it's funny for the DM to role play that they just cannot deduce what's going on, most of them are going to figure out, I need to try something else.
Yeah, the cats see the laser dot on the floor, not always the laser point, which I think is an important distinction. As a dungeon master, doing something like that, role-playing the adversaries intelligently, isn't to screw the player's strategy. You're not metagaming as a dungeon master. You're just not giving the victory on the cheap. You're giving a more actual challenge as it fits the role-playing of the story.
And for me as a DM, it can swing both ways. I always let a monster's ability scores guide my decision-making. If I look at a stat block and see this monster's really intelligent, or very wise, I will play them appropriately. The flip side is if I see this creature's not very smart, I might, and people actually, if they watched me DMing at D&D Live, will even see this. I had a monster of rock at one point that did not take an opportunity attack it could have taken. That was a role-playing choice I made for that monster.
Right.
I decided that this bloodthirsty demon was distracted and just didn't do it. Because some monsters I play to the hilt when it comes to their tactical cunning on the battlefield. Others, I don't. And I do that not only to give a feeling of authenticity to the creatures, to the characters, but also to create peaks and valleys in the gameplay experience. The game design of D&D does that as well. We've designed D&D to have ups and downs.
Sure.
You'll even see that in the swinginess of, going from the dejection of rolling a 1 and nothing happening one round to the thrill of rolling a 20 on the next. That's a great example of how we've built peaks and valleys into the base systems. But your role-playing, your tactical decisions can also help create texture so that not every battle plays out the same way. You don't always know if the creature is going to take its opportunity attack.
Right.
And just as, I have DM'd for countless groups over the years, and just as not every player character takes every opportunity attack they can. I've seen many players, they just decide, no, I'm going to let them go. Or my mind is elsewhere.
Right.
And that is a tangent, but it is related to monsters and NPCs can figure things out. And so when they interact with this manifested mind and it's like, what the heck is happening? They're going to start sleuthing.
Speaking of interactions with the manifested mind, can an unseen servant combine or interact with the artificial mind?
I'm not sure exactly what the unseen servant would do with it. The
An interesting sort of...
the invisible force that is the unseen servant, I suppose, could maybe try to do a little dance with the intangible spectral mind. Maybe there is a romance waiting to happen. I want this story of the unseen servant that falls in love with the manifested mind.
Neon Deflector, we're asking you to write us.
Yes, that is... Just like last time I gave a design challenge about tools, that's my design challenge. I want the story of the unseen servant
it couldn't find
falling in love.
It can't interact with anyone else. Yes. But now, the artificial mind, it's the only thing it can interact with.
Yeah, maybe the two of them are in like the current plane of existence that they're normally functioning on, and some other spectral plane at the same time, and they can interact with each other there. And maybe the manifested mind is the only creature in existence. Well, it's not a creature, but the only thing in existence that is able to see the unseen servant.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's a nice segue. Can you cast invisibility on it to mask it even further from observation or perception?
So that is really a question about the invisibility spell. So as I always love to do, let's go take a look at the spell. So I'm calling it up on D&D Beyond. Invisibility. It says a creature you touch becomes invisible until the spell ends. The mind is not a creature.
Okay. Sorry, 6 inches from the ground. I could see where you were going with it. To mask it even further. But there you go. So that is a bit on the archivist.
The only other thing is at 14th level, you can also juice up your information overload. I almost said overlord. That you can expend a spell slot. As part of it before is you could expend spell slots to increase the damage, and now at 14th level, if you do that, you also can potentially stun the person, where it's just too much information for their mind to handle as you pour that in.
I like information overlord. That's a good name for an enemy artificer.
Oh yes,
who's an archivist?
Yeah, actually,
information.
Yeah, you can imagine almost like a in a superhero story.
Yes.
You could have some villainous archivist show up and proclaim themselves, "Behold, I am information overlord."
And they stun you with trivia that
Yes.
you might not be aware of.
And please don't.
Did you know that the human head weighs 8 pounds?
People just curl up into a ball. I can't take it. Should we talk about the Battlesmith?
Yes, let's. We've got a bit of time, so let's talk through some more of the Battlesmith. One of the other new subclasses added to the Artificer. So please tell us who or what is the Battlesmith? What was the genesis or derivation there?
So the Battlesmith is a concept that I've been pondering for quite a few months now, and in fact was sort of in its infant form when we sent out the previous version of the Artificer. And I also actually at that point knew the Archivist was also on the horizon. But the Battlesmith was something very early on when Keith Baker and I were chatting about digging deeper into this class, tying it more to the world of Eberron. It was something he brought up of wouldn't it be cool to have a Artificer who is really good in melee, who's not afraid to wade into battle. And also then, I wanted to add into that mix somebody who isn't just good at dealing damage, because our game is filled with people who are good at dealing damage, but who can go out onto the battlefield to help and protect people. Because again, as I mentioned in some of our other discussions about the Artificer, we really wanted to ground the story behind these subclasses in the world of Eberron. I mean, because we find always, this is a theme you've heard me say before, our design tends to be better when it's drenched in story. And we imagined that the Battlesmiths, these are the Artificers who in the terrible battles of the last war could be seen out on the battlefield, not only fighting, but also saving people's lives. So a little bit of Paladin in them, and there are even some features here that are reminiscent of the Paladin, particularly the Battlesmith spell list very intentionally has a number of spells on it that the Paladin has. And in fact, some of these are spells that in our game almost no one else in the game has access to other than the Paladin. So it's kind of special that the Battlesmith gains access to this particular suite of spells.
Now, was it designed sort of intentionally as a counterpart a bit to the Artillerist, where the Artillerist is, well, I'm back further from the battlefield, lobbing damage out there, and I'm safe behind my walls. And the Battlesmith is, no, it's Captain America, I'm Wonder Woman, I'm going out there to help.
Exactly.
Okay.
The two of them are the most offensive of the four, and the Artillerist is, I mean, it's right in the name, is all about fighting from afar,
right.
And the Battlesmith is emboldened to get up close. And you can also, when you look at the four, when you see this quartet of subclasses, two are very much about battle, and then the other two are more sort of the toolkit subclasses. So the Alchemist and the Archivist are much more the sort of utility subclasses, and the Artillerist and the Battlesmith are much more about battle. That said, all four have powerful combat abilities, including the Alchemist. But story-wise, the Battlesmith and the Artillerist are the two that are more battle-oriented. When it comes to tools, the Battlesmith has leatherworkers' tools and smiths' tools, and then is good at making magic armor because they are a big part of their story is protection, and they also, unlike the other Artificers, gain proficiency with martial weapons. So they are able to wield a much broader array of weapons than the other Artificers are. And they are also able to attack with magic weapons using their intelligence instead of their strength or dexterity. The design conceit here is that because, again, the whole class is about channeling magic through objects,
right.
It means if they're wielding a magic weapon, whether it's a melee weapon or a ranged weapon, they are able to use their cunning as artificers and some of their magic to direct that attack rather than their brute strength or their dexterity.
Story-wise, I can see sort of like a Gandalf parallel, where he is out on the battlefield with a sword sometimes,
Yes.
and using, you don't see him as a physically dominant character, but a magically dominant character.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I know you're getting to it, but I'm also excited about the Battlesmith's Iron Defender.
The Iron Defender, yes. So Iron Defenders have been in Eberron since the beginning. They have even appeared in Eberron art with Artificers. So in some ways, of the four, this Iron Defender is an example of a thing you make that is very prominent and out in the world. The Iron Defender is the most traditional for Eberron when it comes to the four subclasses. Now, this Iron Defender is different from Iron Defenders of the past, and because of that, there's actually a good chance that in the next version I'll change its name. In fact, in all of my drafts of the Battlesmith, this creature was actually called the Steel Defender because I wanted to distinguish it from the old Iron Defender. At the last minute, Keith and I talked about it, and we flipped back to the original name, but there's a good chance we will then flip right back to the other because at some point we're probably going to want to just have a vanilla Iron Defender in the game that is different from this special companion that a Battlesmith creates. Now, so then that of course begs the question, what is special about it?
Right.
It accompanies you. So the Battlesmith, like the Alchemist, is a subclass with this companion. So two of the Artificer subclasses have a companion and two do not. The two that don't are the Archivist and the Artillerist, and the Alchemist and the Battlesmith are the two that are. Now, the Archivist, to be fair, is sort of on the line, because if you manifest the mind, then it becomes a companion-like phenomenon.
Right.
But it's, I put it like that because, again, it's not a creature.
It's not a physical companion.
No.
That's
No, it is just, in many ways, it's no different from, something you might create out in the environment with a spell or something else. It's an effect that is present. The Iron Defender, though, is very much a companion. It's a creature of the construct type, and you can use your bonus action, if you're the Battlesmith, to get it to use one of its actions and in its stat block. And those are its bite, which is just it goes up and chomps somebody, but then also repair. I had this idea of almost imagining the Iron Defender as like a Saint Bernard, that because these Battlesmiths, they're not only out there to deal damage, they're out there to actually defend and help people.
right.
And so I wanted this version of the Iron Defender, I mean, it's right there in the name, Defender, to actually have the ability to provide some kind of defense and repair. So one of its actions is that it can restore hit points to itself or to one construct or object within 5 feet of it. This is a really important ability. This is one of those ones, if you read it quick, you'll be like, what's the big deal about this? Keep in mind, there are very few things in the game that will actually heal constructs and objects.
It does not say creature by design, correct? This is
That
a
is
construct
correct.
or an object.
And that's also why the ability is called Repair. This helps the Iron Defender go up. And you can imagine it, maybe it's licking the thing, or little spindly arms come out with little tools on them to repair something. But this guy could go out and repair the turrets, say, of an artillerist, could go out and repair some kind of fortification, or a construct, like a Warforged Titan that might be on the battlefield. This critter could go out, and I think of it as a pup, because I'm thinking of it as a Saint Bernard.
Well, now I'm picturing that little brandy that they would always wear in the cartoons.
Yes,
The barrel of brandy.
Yep.
And, little arms would come out and repair.
Now, the other bit is they have this defensive pounce, and this defensive pounce is an awesome ability. It uses up the Iron Defender's reaction, but not the reaction of the Artificer. So as long as your Iron Defender is on the battlefield with you, it can impose disadvantage on the attack roll of one creature it can see within 5 feet of it. Now, it means it's going to have to be within 5 feet. So the Iron Defender is going to spend a lot of time moving around the battlefield to get near people. But again, I'm imagining it's barking and jumping up and distracting your attackers. You can also, on your turn, if you decide to use your bonus action, you can also cause it to dash, disengage, or take the help action. Otherwise, on its turn, it can just move. And in moving doesn't require an action on the part of the Battlesmith. So then we get up to Arcane Jolt at 6th level. And people will see a theme here, that in all of the Artificers, as they go up in level, their higher level abilities tend to improve their lower level abilities and often give them new capabilities as well. So at 6th level, the Iron Defender's Bite is now considered magical for the purposes of bypassing resistances and immunities. This is important because its bite is piercing, and if it didn't get this ability, then it would very quickly reach a point where if it's going up against creatures that have resistance to non-magical piercing damage, it would not.
It's
be of much
gumming
use.
them for all that's worth.
Now that said, in many ways, the main value your Iron Defender brings is the defensive pounce, not its bite. But still, if you're going to have it bite, you want it to actually feel like it's making a difference.
Right. This was a question that came in. I think it was related to the turrets as well, regarding them scaling at higher levels, that potential option. But it seems like at higher levels, there are some of these abilities that are improved for the Defender.
Absolutely. And the other bit is when you or your Defender hits a target with a magic weapon attack, you can channel magic through to make that attack even better. And here's where you can cause extra damage, or you can restore hit points. And here is where the Iron Defender can turn into a conduit for healing energy to a chosen recipient. And you'll see that recipient can be one creature or object. This is, again, going along with the theme of the Battlesmith isn't just good at healing creatures, which a number of our classes are good at in the game.
Right.
The best of the best being the Life Cleric. But the Battlesmith can also, again, heal objects. And so, again, it's a subtle thing, but in some circumstances, I could see it making a big difference. Finally, at 14th level, that extra damage gets even higher. And then that defensive pounce, remember how I said that in many ways is the signature ability of the Iron Defender?
Yes.
Now, not only is it messing with the attack rolls of people, but it's also dealing force damage to them when it messes with their attack rolls. So the Battlesmith is a kind of a potent package of defensive capabilities, some healing, and also the ability to deal an appreciable amount of damage as well. One of my goals with the Battlesmith also was of the 4 Artificers, to make it the most straightforward in play. So it's a little less complex than the others. And again, that's by design.
But still, as you would say, juicy. You've got
Yes.
your Iron Defender and all sorts of things that come along with it at higher levels.
Absolutely. But once you've actually figured out how the Iron Defender works, it's not actually that complex. People might be curious because you'll notice that in the class, about the only subclass that is really fine-tuned for weapon use is the Battlesmith. And so people have been curious, well, why have the arcane armament feature built into the base class? Well, a little preview for where the class is likely to go. in the next version of the class, it's highly likely that Arcane Armament will vanish from the core class, and the extra attack capability will just rest inside the Battlesmith, and that we will do some tweaking in the other subclasses to compensate for that lack. Arcane Armament is really just in the base class to speak to the theme of versatility, but one of the bits of feedback we've seen for a number of weeks on Twitter, on Reddit, and elsewhere is some confusion, almost like we made the class almost too versatile, because some people, when they are evaluating a class, will see that, oh, this class can do X, and they will interpret that to mean the class must do X. Now, in a role-playing game, you are never required to do anything that is in your class. It's often a good idea to do it.
If you're playing a cleric, it would be nice to heal your party from time to time.
But you're not required to.
Right.
And it is always risky when we do design, and if the design theme that we're going for is versatility, the balancing act is we want to make sure there's still a clear path for people who are trying to figure out what do I do with this class. And I think with the Artificer, if anything, we were a little too successful with versatility. We're not going to tone it down much because, again, versatility is core to this class's identity. But Arcane Armament is a great example of something that will probably get snipped. But again, before I make my final decision, I want to see the playtest feedback and just fold it into the Battlesmith in some way, with the other subclasses getting something else to resolve the overall package of the class, how it works, how it's supposed to be used in combat.
Believe it or not, we're almost at 2 o'clock already, and we haven't even gone through all of the updates.
We have the infusions to talk about.
So we might have to come back sooner than later.
Yes.
Yeah. Depending on your schedule, we have next week open, so we will talk about that. We've answered about 2 of your questions that have come in as well. So we do need to go through that.
So it sounds like we also need an episode to just answer a lot of questions.
Yes, as always, because those are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What happens when you do a Leomund's tiny hut inside the top of a rope trick? Now I know, because we've addressed that last one.
And Leomund's tiny hut is one of those spells that invites questions.
Yeah. So let's do that. It's 2 o'clock. We're going to kick it over to Heroes of the Veil. And pending your schedule, we'd love to continue this conversation next week and address more of your questions as part of the discussion with the updates to the Unearthed Arcana Artificer.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time during the day. Thanks to everyone watching as well, spending an hour out of your day, afternoon, or wherever your time zone is. Thanks as always to our followers, our subscribers, and of course to our moderators. For everyone who did attend D&D Live 2019, thank you so much for attending, for making the trip down to Los Angeles, and for those interested in catching up on the games and events and everything that took place there. We'll be adding those archival footage, the archivist, to the YouTube channel in the coming days, if they're not already there. All right. Thanks, everyone.